Hey guys, Harv here, and welcome back to the Kerbal space program. This is our That's No Moon base, and today we have episode 3 in which we are taking this moon motel, otherwise known as the living quarters, onto the surface of the moon and add it to our base. This is the actual module submitted by person whose name is currently on screen. I'm sorry, the forums are down at the moment, so I can't actually check, and I've forgotten your name, so yeah, sorry. But yeah, look at this module. This is, well, utility, I'm calling them, isn't it? Yeah, utility. It looks pretty damn nice. Now, it's quite abstract, so it's got 3 habitation modules not equally positioned, so that rover on the front was actually as a counterweight. But before we get too much onto that, first we're going to move this hangar. Because I know in the previous episode I was talking about, oh, I'm gonna have a massive base. I don't want it too close. It's an outer lying utility. It needs to be further away. But well, I may have exaggerated a little. I mean, I don't really think the base is going to be that massive that we need all that space. And after doing a recent challenge with the Matt Dennis on our Challenging YouTubers series, walking Kerbals across the surface of the moon takes a bloody age. Pardon my language. So now we've moved this slightly closer. I think that's about more what we're looking at here. And we can go back, and I've built the launch stage already. You don't really need to see that. Added this sky crane on top for reasons. And I've got to say, this utility, I'm very, very passionate about this utility. Really, really am. I mean, I started off and it seemed so amazing. Really does, doesn't it? If you look at it and the counterbalance, and it was all, you know, and don't worry about the I was told not to worry about the center of mass because what's it called? He said in his post that he had used that counterweight in the form of the rover as a way to put the center of mass aligned with the center of thrust. So I'm sure that's all okay. Now and that's actually pretty good in itself because it means we get an extra rover about with it, and the rover has actually got a docking port on the top and on the base of it, so that's pretty nice indeed. We dropped the first pair. We're going for our gravity turn shortly, and we're going to get this thing down onto the moon. Now, I have made a few slight modifications to the utility, because despite the fact that you had actually told me explicitly that this thing had a centre of mass that was in line with the centre of thrust, it was not. So I improved it a little for you, and it took all of 10 seconds to do so. The rover on the side now has a half fuel tank attached underneath it, and that's pretty much all it took. I've also removed the built-in landing stage at the bottom. There were a few radially mounted liquid engines underneath the utility to serve as the last minute kind of landing thing that I asked for, but now I've got a sky crane on top. That's not really necessary. Oh yeah, and putting the sky crane there actually required the removal of a few antennas, but you know, antennae, something, the plural of antenna. Yeah, removed a few of them, and but you know, it's not really much problem. The reason this utility got chosen is because it looked nice and the parts count was the lowest. I think it was actually the lowest that was submitted that had any reasonable size or scope. And you guys really need to accept the fact that you're not the only utility, right? And you know how the game lags when you get too many ships close together. Too many parts, more like. It's not really individual ships, it's just how many parts it has to render and do the physics calculations for. The less parts we use in each utility, the more utilities we're going to have. Simple formula like that, okay? So just bear in mind, I'm not going to give a parts limit, because if I want something amazing, then it's going to probably require quite a few parts. But this had 100, where most were in the region of 250. So just bear in mind that if you build one that's got less parts than everyone else, then you're looking pretty good to be chosen. Right, so we skipped our orbit, we went straight for our moon transfer, and now we have warped up and we've decreased our lunar periaps down below the surface of the moon, which means that we were going to crash. Yeah, we're just going to... No, we're going to crash the stage that actually brought us here, the big Rockomax liquid stack. Just detach that about now. There we go. RCS away from it a little. And we'll let that sail down and impact on the moon. Right, now let's turn this thing around and let's try and save us from actually crashing. So we're going to point it towards 90 degrees. I mean, we are actually coming down our trajectory is taking us pretty much near where our landing site is. Unfortunately, we're using nuclear engines, which have a reputation for being really weak. The problem, I mean, they're not actually the weakest engine by far. You've got the ion engine, the ant engine, the LV909 is 3 times weaker than the nuclear, and then there's nuclear. Now the problem with that is that no one in their right mind uses an ion engine for pushing around an entire utility. But you do use nuclear engines, and despite having the extra thrust, they are in fact still pretty weak for the purpose. So, you know, I had a few problems, but it was nothing major. Get round to the periapsis that we've now raised up to 30 kilometers, and burn this thing retrograde in order to bring down our periapsis and stay inside the lunar orbit. Now you can see I'm tipping us slightly, which is a problem, and it's a problem caused by centre of mass being offline, or out of sync, not on the same axis as the centre of thrust. And of course it's never going to be perfect. Without, you know, however much customization we try and do, it's going to be extremely hard to get the centre of mass perfect, but the things I've done in a couple of seconds have improved it dramatically over the previous flights. Now, I've brought down the periapsis till it's just over our base, and we're going to warp this thing round. Pretty standard procedure. I have made one mistake, one of a few to come at this point, which is that I actually forgot to put fuel lines from the centre tank to the outside quadruple mini tanks. So this requires any burns I've got to do, I have to do them using less than 90 liquid fuel, because that's the capacity of those outside tanks, and I can't really refuel during a burn, otherwise things will get even more off balance. I suppose if I knew how, or if I know exactly where the centre of mass was out of balance, I probably could stand a chance of refueling, because I would shift fuel into the place where centre of mass needs to move. That might provide a little bit, but it doesn't really matter. The point is, in order to be stable, we can't really afford to refuel. So with our fuel situation, despite having enough fuel, we're not actually putting it where it needs to be used. But oh well, we've adjusted our inclination, or we're in the process of adjusting our inclination, bringing it over. This video is at 1.9875 times speed. I've got no idea. It's around 2 times speed. As I've mentioned previously, instead of just telling it to run at 2 times speed with Sony Vegas, you actually shorten the length of the clip. Shorten the length of the clip whilst holding control, and that squeezes the clips. So I went from something like a 53-minute video. This particular session of footage was something like 53 minutes, and now it's about 25. So you know, it's about 2 times speed. But nonetheless, let's bring this thing down. And I'm trying desperately to get us on target, and the reason, as I've stated, that these nuclear engines are pretty damn weak, so it's a lot of staging burns, whereas the most efficient way to do things is a suicide burn in the last second, with you literally just slowing down enough as you hit the surface. That's not really an option, because I've got no idea how long it takes to actually slow down enough, and that's how far ahead I'd have to be, so I'm taking it safe. I'm playing it safely. I'm trying to slow us down to a reasonable amount of speed before we actually get to where we want to be. And of course, if I burn retrograde before the target, or too much before the target, then our trajectory will fall short of it, hence why we're burning above the horizon to lift us back up and slow us down whilst keeping the trajectory roughly where it needs to be. Which is pretty good. It's a technique that I've had to practice a lot over the past 4 hours. Moving on, we are getting ever closer. And there we're about, was it 15 kilometers away? I can't really see, my preview window is pretty small. About 15 kilometers away, maybe 10 kilometers now, I'm guessing. 200 and so many meters per second, bringing it down, getting ever closer. And we get a bit of tipping, but if I do it at this low thrust, it turns out the vectoring of the engines is almost enough to actually counter the offset center of mass. So burn a bit much because we need to. Oh wait, yeah, we can't really afford to burn lightly, can we, Harvey? No, we can't. Not really. Wow, those nuclear engines are weak. So I've made a few modifications. Namely, this is the thing we needed all along. We needed a man. Now, it's a shame I didn't actually record one of the interesting parts of it, well, one of the most interesting parts of this video, which was actually getting the guy inside, or on top of the rocket. Now you have to bear in mind that submitted utilities come with probes, because obviously how can you load them up otherwise? And when you are in a VAB and you have a selected command pod, whether it's a probe or whether it's actually a capsule, that is the parent part of the entire ship. Everything revolves around that one part that it was originally built from. So to put a man inside this, you can't just swap that out for a man. You can't swap it out for a capsule with a man inside. If you add a capsule, it'll be empty. So I had to construct this this leaning tower of Pisa to actually get a man inside it, and I didn't record it, which was a bit stupid of me. It was actually pretty funny, the different evolutions that went through in the half an hour it took to get it working. Nevertheless, we are rising. We have just passed 30 kilometers. Just as a disclaimer, if I did not turn over at 10 kilometers, there's a reason for it. I wanted to drop the stacks safely. If I turned over slightly after 10 kilometers, it doesn't really make a big difference. Now, getting this thing higher. You'll actually notice, I've just realized now, my stacks, the final remaining pair that we've just dropped now, were actually, looking at the camera the way it is now, one was on top of the middle stack and the other was on the bottom. Now, I remember in a recent episode, or not quite recent, it's actually quite a while ago now, I did a video in which I was using asparagus staging and turning over with the last pair being on top and the other, the other side of that pair being on the bottom, similar to how it was just then. I was having problems. Because it's kind of hard to explain, but if you imagine taking a wide mass and tipping it sideways, so the longest side is having to be lifted over, basically what was happening then, it's going to be much more prone to damage than if you had the fuel tanks horizontally aligned and you all tipped them the same amount. Those of you who saw the video probably understand me, actually specifically that comment which was posted by our good friend DJ Naked, which is an epic name. But yeah, so the reason I've always tried to build with the idea of having the last pair horizontal to the horizon, so that when you tip over, there's less stress on the joints and everything. Unfortunately, there's some torque going on due to the fuel lines, or maybe due to the offset mass, which means that we do actually turn and I actually end up pointing horizontal to the horizon, which means that my stack ends up being vertical. Just a little bit of irrelevant knowledge there. And we've separated from that. Once again, it's going to crash down into the moon, and we are burning away. You know, there's something that I like to think now after this episode, which is that the craters on the moon, or the craters on the moon, 2 O's, the craters on the moon were from meteoroid impacts, or actually meteorite impacts, seeing as there's no atmosphere. Whatever, they're from meteorites. The craters on the moon, with a U, are from failed space missions. There's probably enough failed space missions in this 1 4-hour recording session to actually make that worthwhile. So, we're getting down to our periapsis. This is exactly the same thing that we've just seen, so why I'm showing you it is a mystery. Have we just passed Leet? Yes, we did, we just passed Leet, well done. I've got Audacity open on one screen, I've got the editor open on the other screen. It's a pretty nice layout having dual monitors, so I can actually watch Audacity now. Never used to be able to. But anyway, I've also, in this version, so apart from adding on a capsule, I've also put on the fuel lines, so that we don't have to worry about refueling in the middle of our burns. There we go, we've got a decent orbit there. Unfortunately, the base is currently on the dark side of the moon. The dark side. So we're going to have to do some time warping. Now, I've been saying that, we'll use the ISS for our time warping purposes, but it's a bit of a waste of time, seeing as it takes about as long to load up the ISS as it does to actually just do the time warp whilst loading up the Hangar, say. I mean, I'm sure as we get into later episodes of this and we as we time accelerate now, but as we get into the later episodes, we'll have more and more parts to worry about. I'm sure it'll probably take the same amount, if not longer, time to load up the base as it will take to load up the ISS. But never mind, we have now warped until the base itself is in daylight, and we are go for landing, pretty much. This is gonna be successful, hopefully. So, we are currently in a bit of an inclined orbit. Unfortunately, our orbit is inclined the incorrect way, and we need to burn north to sort that out. There we go, my screen went black because I didn't do anything for 15 minutes. There we go, we are pointing the correct way now, or travelling in the correct direction. We get about here, and now it's time to do our deorbiting burn. So, you might notice that in every single one of my videos, I'm pretty sure every single one, unless it was some short one-off, in every single video I've been using fine control. And that's been really good for me. It's been making my movements so much more gentle and precise. Unfortunately, with offset mass, that's not really an option. You kind of need to have quick reactions, and brutal, strong reactions to fight the mass. In fact, in the time it took to make this video, I went through several different iterations of the craft, and I actually ended up trying to use RCS. Minus a man. Didn't really think to put a man in there, despite my knowledge that I do have. I used probe with lots of RCS. And yeah, it didn't really help up that much for some reason. I don't know why, I'm not entirely sure why. I put the RCS thrusters as high up as possible. Here's a tip: if you put the thrusters as far away from the centre of mass as possible, then they'll give you more torque, because it's probably not physically related to this, but it kind of reminds me of the idea of a lever. The longer the lever, the less force you have to apply at the longer end in order to do the work. So if the thrusters are really high up, then you have to do less moving around to actually get the rotation you want. That's for rotation, not for translation. Obviously, if you're trying to translate, then you need to have your thrusters at the centre of mass, because you're trying to move everything sideways rather than just spin it. Anyway, we're coming down on our target. Are you going too fast, Harvey? Ooh, better warp. You are down below 5,000 meters. And you can see this thing just pulling us off to one direction. And I'm just trying to fight it to get back to the direction it needs to be. Really was a struggle. Now I do actually have RCS on this craft that I've added, and that it does help somewhat, having said all that I've just said, but it's not perfect. So we kind of do end up having to run the throttle at a pretty low rate. But nonetheless, it's not really too much of a problem. We managed to bring this down. The advantage of having the man inside, as I've been going on about a little, having a man inside the ship helps, because the capsules have gyro inside. Or, as I like to imagine, the Kerbal's just slamming himself against the walls to try and move the whole thing around. But they have more torque at the end of the day. At the end of the day, a man inside or on top of your rocket gives your turning more capability. It's stronger. Now look at this gentle. The sky crane is beautiful for this. For my entire project, the sky crane is just perfect. So I'm thinking, I changed this around a lot, but really, what can you expect? Instead of having, you know, a dedicated system for you doing the final touchdown, it would be nice if you have some sort of way to move around, either rover wheels or some sort of VTOL engine to maybe just relocate things like we do with the Hangar. Instead, it might be quite nice to have a docking port or a decoupler or just a position on top of your utility, which I can attach this sky crane to. And there we go! We've landed! Pretty awesome. Now, as we fall... Oh, okay, yes, the centre of mass is offset because... yeah, it's offset. Right, so we turn on the engines, we decouple, and we promptly fall over. Let's watch that back again. We turn on the engines, we decouple, and unfortunately, because the parent part of the ship is not the crew module, it is actually the probe, we switch to the probe. Now, if you have a ship, if you are in your ship and you switch to, you decouple another ship from your ship, and you have a man inside that one, the engines will turn off. So we end up with this, where we've actually just tipped the entire thing over. The utility's fine, I mean, nothing's broken. Unfortunately, our sky crane's doing less well. It's kind of face planting in the dirt at the moment. So we've detached the rover, as you can see, and I mean, this is going to be pretty useful, and this leads me on to what I want submitted next, because this is just a very small fuel capacity thing for moving stuff around. But we're currently impromptu use. We are trying to use this to push the sky crane back up. I know it sounds crazy, but we'll do it. I'm sure it won't take much effort. We just need to kind of give it a nudge. Oh, yeah, that's a bit of a heavy module than I really expected. Okay, well, you know, that's not all bad. I mean, we do have engines pointing up towards the surface. We could do something fun with this. We could perhaps, I don't know, use it as like a jump jet. I know you can get into orbit with EVA packs nearly if we get to Freddy. Oh. Hatch is obstructed, can't exit. My idea was going to be we leave this here, and we turn the engines on, and we jump Kerbals into the stream of radioactive exhaust, and that actually pushes them up into orbit, or helps them, gives them a helping hand. But no, the hatch is obstructed. Thing going wrong after thing going wrong. Right, let's back up the rover, let's accelerate, and let's try and knock this thing about. Come on you! Get up, Sonny! You need to do work today. Damn it. Doesn't help that I don't have enough generators on this to actually power the wheels continuously, but that's not a problem. Just trying to push. Come on, yes, switch to it and move. No. The crew capsule may have more torque, but it certainly does not have enough to turn the entire module. Now. What? What are we going to do about this problem? We have a man stranded inside the capsule. He's basically actually trapped underneath wreckage. That is pretty much what is going on here. So, as we get pretty nice screenshots, cinematic screenshot there. What are we going to do about this? Well, this brings us on to what we need for our next episode. I hope you have enjoyed this episode of That's No Moon Base. Let's go over to the hangar and park our rover here. Yes, you finally get to make me a rover. I want a multi-purpose utility vehicle of some description. The main purpose is that it needs to have some sort of mechanic that can flip our sky crane up and let us get Fredin, I think was his name, let us get Fredin Kerman out. We need some sort of module, some sort of utility that can actually, you know, do work. Just general multi-purpose, low part count, low mass, and try and make it as useful in every desirable circumstance as possible. Specifically getting Fredin out of his sticky situation. Unfortunately, the person who made this hangar, I don't know whether it's your fault, I don't know whether we are on a slope, because we are slightly, the docking port isn't at the correct altitude. It's not the correct height above the surface. It's very, very slight. It's so slight. And I'm trying to use the RCS just to help us, you know, get this thing attached. But unfortunately, the rover can't actually dock onto these modules. And I can't really reverse trying the other ones because the magnetic field is too strong for the rover wheels to overcome. So, we've had a few failures today, haven't we? Yes, quite. But if you want to submit your multi-purpose utility vehicle, please do in the forum link below. The forum thread for submissions is in the description. Please do read the description. And now I present to you a short compilation of the failures that occurred throughout the 4 hours it took to construct and do this mission. I'll see you all next time. Damn, you guys are going to enjoy the new music I have access to. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, please do like the video, and I'll see you all next time.